Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Greywater Project interview series. Today, we're talking with Josh Newton, the founder of Josh's Water Jobs, who is a super cool person. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk to me. And it would be great if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. Happy to be here. So I'm Josh Newton. In my paid profession, I'm a freelancer. I work with issues on global water governance and political processes. So that basically means how countries interact with each other at the global level, mostly within the UN system. And I will work with various organizations right now, including the Stockholm International Water Institute, the World Bank, the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, all on this kind of global political processes related to water. And then, yes, I'm the founder of Josh's Water Jobs, which has been the website's been going on now for over 6 years, but it's been a listserv for 11 now. So it's definitely a part of my daily life.
Amazing. It's so cool that you do so many different things. And I have to ask, how did you get interested in the water space?
So for me, I was studying environmental conservation, or that's what I wanted to study in undergrad. And I went to an unusual undergrad program where we spent 3 out of 4 years abroad,
Mm.
and then doing internships actually 4 out of 8 semesters instead of coursework. And so I was doing one of my internships in Mendoza, Argentina, at a geographic research institute, and I didn't really know what my project was going to be for the semester. And so my advisors suggested that I look at this aqueduct project where they were going to bring water via an aqueduct to the Piedmont area above the city of Mendoza. But this was something like 20 plus years ago. Socioeconomic and environmental impact assessments weren't really as common back then. And so that's what I did my project on. And just learning about how fascinating this issue of water was, and that just wasn't an environmental issue, but it was a legal issue and an economic issue, cultural, and all this multifaceted, nature of water absolutely fascinated me. And yeah, that was over 20 years ago, and I haven't looked back since.
Incredible. That's a really interesting way to get into this space, just like jumping into a project and seeing how important it is.
Mm.
As someone who works like in the UN system and with a lot of international stakeholders, do you have any thoughts on the concept of water alignment and aligning climate projects, sustainable finance with the needs of the water sector?
Yeah, it's super important. I mean, the climate and water are inextricably linked. And so it's almost hard to address one without the other. And on the climate side, that's both mitigation and adaptation. So when thinking about, climate mitigation projects, you have to think about how the water in situation will be impacted by that, or the water it will take to use within that project. And, climate is water is like the medium through which climate expresses itself, and that's through floods and droughts. And so when you're talking about adaptation, hugely important issue, water, because how it, climate expresses itself, like I said, is through that. So adaptation projects are very much yeah, focused on water, or can be, many of them. So yeah, so it's hard to look at one without the other, and the alignment should be there, and it's not done enough. They're still siloed in two separate areas. So the more we can align those two, let's say, thematic areas and address them together, I think the better off we'll all be.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And if you don't mind, if I push on that a tiny bit more, one thing that I've noticed is people who work particularly on climate or who are very focused on like greenhouse gas reductions, or people who focus particularly on energy, et cetera, like everyone knows their own particular area, but they don't know how to bring in sustainability across those different connecting disciplines. Do you have any ideas or best practices about how to create projects or do policy that takes all of that into consideration? I mean, it's a big ask, but any insights?
Yeah, no, it's truly complicated, and the water community is guilty of this as well. We all, it's almost like human nature to function within what's comfortable to us and our own silos. So it just really, really takes, say, an effort from looking at, if I'm in the water community, it takes a big effort to go out of my comfort zone, out of my community, reach out to those other communities to be able to integrate them, include them within the space I'm working in. In this case, it's water, and to see what the impact is, both on what their thematic impacts on water and what the work we're doing and impacts on their thematic area, and see where the synergies are, where we can optimize, financial, intellectual, human resources to be able to kind of integrate these subject areas as much as possible. But it's so much easier said than done. It's forever a challenge, because it requires us just to go outside our comfort zone.
Yeah, that can be a difficult thing, but a really important one to focus on.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and ask you about Josh's water jobs, because I think that's how many people, at least on the internet, know you, or at least young water professionals know you through that way. What was your inspiration? Why did you start it?
Well, it's almost it's more that I fell into it kind of backwards in a way. As you know, when I was a young professional, people always circulate, oh, could you please pass along this job opening to your network? And so when that happened a few times, I was like, okay, who's my network that I would circulate a job to? So I put together my 30, whatever young professional water friends into a Word document. And anytime a job came out, I'd copy paste the email address into my Gmail account and send out the job. And then it might have happened. I don't remember, but maybe two or three jobs came at once, and I put them together into a little list,
Mm.
and sent them out. And then when that started happening more frequently, I started actually looking for jobs out there at various organizations to see, and adding them to this list. That then I was actually sending out once a month with like 10 jobs or something like that. And then I'd be at conferences and I'd tell people, other young professionals, like, hey, I have this list, I send it out once in a while, it's free if you want to join. So I started collecting more email address and then started looking more. And then after 5 years of just doing that and word of mouth, the list was like 800 people and 60 jobs a week.
Yeah, that is
And
a
I was
lot.
spending a lot of time on it. But then, I'd get friends would complain that they wouldn't be able to find the old jobs that I'd, sent a list in before. So it made sense at that point to make a online searchable database. And so that's when the website was born, which is 6.5 years ago almost now. And we're on our second website now. But yeah, so it's just something that started to gain momentum and people appreciate it a lot, and so that just validated the work I was putting into it. So it just kept going and growing and growing, and now it's a big platform, and I have so many more ideas about where to go with it. But yeah, it's just been a great ride.
Amazing. That is really, really cool. Can you tell us a little bit about like the challenges you encountered in terms of like getting this all together? And I must say, I think if I received a note from someone being like, send this job out, I don't think I would necessarily go through all the trouble and to put this all together and make this like a very accessible resource for people.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know how I'd build momentum. Where now it's like, yeah, I spend 15 hours a week on this website, and it's a volunteer service. Like it's for free. And so, yeah, I'm not sure where that comes from, but I mean, to just for an example, is like when I was at World Water Week this last year in Stockholm a few months ago. I think I had, it was like 20 or 25 people came up to me and said, "Thank you, I got my job because of your website." And I think there's just like nothing better than hearing that, and that I'm able to help people find jobs, which is, can be a very nerve wracking process. And so the fact that I can help with that and provide hope, I think is very it's very validating for the whole experience, and just makes me, keep doing it more and more.
Yeah.
The challenges behind it, I mean, it's just a lot of it has been trying is for me, spending not as much time on it as I do. It's just finding time for it because, I have a regular job, and so the challenge has always been every week to find the time to look for the jobs because I still find most of the jobs, and then get them online. So the what would facilitate that is kind of the technical challenges around it about is such a curated list. I mean, if you put every water job out there in the world, there'd be tens of thousands, and so it's
Mhm.
very specific in what I look for and what I believe the audience is looking for. And someday we'll expand beyond what it is now in terms of the volume and types of jobs. But for right now, to have any kind of tool that would, scrape the web, if you will, to find the job, so I don't have to do that every week. So that's been a challenge. So there's technical challenges around it because we have certain, things around the website that we'd like to do, but
Mhm.
it's just faced by technical challenges, which we will get over someday. It's just a matter of resources. Um, yeah, other than that, it's been pretty smooth because it is a free service, so we haven't had, we don't, we're not competing with anybody. We're not. It's just, we put as many jobs out there as we can, and hopefully people are getting jobs, and organizations appreciate the talent they're getting when they hire. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really great. And as someone who definitely has a ton of experience with this, could you talk about some of the pathways for people to jobs in the water sector? Say people who are majoring in undergrad or masters in like environmental engineering or geology or all of these things. Like, what are the general pathways and career options that you tend to see?
Yeah, the thing is, like I mentioned, how I got into the water space and how multifaceted the issue of water is.
Mhm.
You can study so many different things, and it doesn't even have to be a water focused career per se, or area of study rather, and you can still work in water. Engineering, as you mentioned, is one of the obvious routes. Environmental sciences, natural sciences, I think probably is another one. But then, like, I'm a social scientist. I studied international relations, yet I work on water and have always worked on water with that focus. And like I'd say right now in the water, say, space, what's in demand in many places is like economics and finance, and then you have a side that's legal as well. So you can almost study anything because water is linked to almost
Yeah.
everything, you know, give or take, and you can find a way to work in water. So I think that there's not just one pathway. There's half a dozen pathways that you can work with water. And posting the jobs that I do see that variety of that are in skills and knowledge sets that are in demand. Obviously engineering, and hydrology, and those are kind of the top, but I see everything on there, and I try to include that diversity because I think it's fascinating when they're looking for someone who's looking at behavior change to work on issues around water and sanitation, or gender issues, or youth engagement. So yeah, it's just the diversity is fascinating to me. So I like to put as many out there as I can with that diversity. And so, yeah, so like I said, there's not one pathway, there are many. It's just a matter of how you're framing your skill set to kind of get yourself into a job that has those skills in demand in the water sector.
That's really incredible to hear. But I think somehow it's also very intuitive because water is an issue that touches everyone every day. So it only makes sense that people from all backgrounds would have pathways to make an impact in that sector.
Yeah, but I don't think that's how we think about it necessarily. Even though for us who work in water space, but actually not always though, that we know how many different areas it touches. But I don't think that's natural. If somebody is studying economics, for instance, or finance, I don't think it's their natural go-to. Oh, I can work in the water sector. So I think that takes a certain amount of marketing, if you will, for because we need those types and others in the water sector, in the water community. So I think it takes certain marketing that, hey, you can actually work on these issues that are really important and we really need you. But it might not be their first turn to job to look. Oh, I'm going to work on water.
That's a good point. And sort of building on that, what do you see as the future for the water sector? Is there like is there like a need for more young professionals? I'm seeing nodding. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually something I'm starting to work on more and more, kind of on on the side from the website.
As
Is
your
the
second, as your side
yeah,
project to your side project. Yes.
exactly.
With your unlimited free time, I'm sure.
Yeah. So it's very slow in how much I progress on this, but is the water and sanitation workforce. I'm starting to kind of hint at it being the crisis beyond the water crisis, because not
Mm,
only are we having more and more issues around water and sanitation around the world, and climate change exacerbating that, but we actually have more and more needs in terms of human resources to address these issues. And it's not an academic career, or more so even on the vocational level,
mm,
technical side, that people are going into. And so we actually already have a human resources gap in water and sanitation, and it's actually just going to grow. So what I want to start working in more is how to close that gap. And a lot of that is, so those who are working in water sanitation, there's job security, because there will be jobs, for the foreseeable future, the decades to come. But we do need a big marketing effort to get more people to work in the water and sanitation sectors. And then how do we keep those people? How do we educate them, train them, and but then how do we retain them and keep them in the water and sanitation sector as well? So it's something that I want slowly move the website towards, in terms of helping with that, and kind of, I guess, the marketing aspect. And that starts at a very young age. You're talking, before university, more like in middle school, high school. Um, so yeah, so we'll see how that progresses, but it will be a serious issue, and it is in some places already. I just see it in when I'm doing my job searches every week, and the demand, the number of jobs that are out there, is just going up and up. And talking with different types of organizations from in the US, like state governments and private sector, it's just they're really having a hard time finding good people, because there's just not enough out there. And so with it being already an issue, and then the demands going up, it's truly a problem of the future.
that's really interesting to know. Do you think it's because the people in the water space aren't marketing the opportunities that are available? Do people just not know? Is that the gap or one of the reasons?
No, the gap is there's not enough people actually that work on it.
Okay.
So I yeah, I think that not as many people say are going into engineering,
Mm,
as was before. And just the number of actual jobs working on the subject, because of the issues around it, especially in the Western United States, but it's happening all over the country, just to use
sure.
the US as an example.
Mm,
Um, there's just the numbers aren't there. And then and also another part of it is, so you can look at, generally speaking, the global south and global north. It's two issues. The global north is that you actually have the baby boomer generation that'll be retiring within the next 5 to 10 years, and
mm.
in some places that's up to 50% of the water workforce,
Oh, oh my God. Okay.
without a backfill, to replace that. So
Mhm,
that's the US, UK, Europe, and other places like that. We're talking generally speaking, not a
mhm.
rule across the board. And then global south, it's when you don't have, say, access to water and sanitation, just achieving the SDG 6.1 and 6.2 on water and sanitation. There's just not the capacity, even if all the money was there, there's not the capacity to actually make it universal access happen, because there's just not enough trained professionals, to close the actual gap in access to water and sanitation. So you have this, same problem basically everywhere in the world, just different reasons for it. Um, and so it's about attracting at an earlier age people to go into this sector, because it's not, for many, it's just, especially in cultural terms, sometimes it's not the most attractive, or it's stigmatized in terms of working in water and sanitation. So it's going to take a large effort in the future to draw younger people to work in this space.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, and also for pointing out the global north, global south perspectives. That's very helpful to understand and to realize that they're different issues, but they are very much interconnected. Yeah. One last question before we close. Do you have any advice for young people who are interested in water, but even just climate and sustainability more in general, either from an entrepreneurship route or some other avenue?
Um, Good question. Let's see. I mean, what I say normally, I get asked for advice a lot.
Mhm.
The biggest thing that and what helped me early in my career is just to reach out and talk to people who it's either, if you see an organization you want to work for or a job that, in 10 years time that you'd like, or something like that, is just reach out and talk to people, ask for advice, ask for career advice. People love giving advice. People love being asked to give advice, and they will rarely say no. And that's the worst that will happen, is that they say no. So I always encourage, no matter how high level the person is, no matter who the person is, reach out and ask to talk to them about what they do, what their daily job is like, how they got to where they are, in terms of their career path. I think hearing stories about different people's different career paths is absolutely fascinating, because there's no one way, there's no silver bullet to where people got to where they are. It's such a diversity, and accidental in some ways, and serendipitous, and so it's just fascinating to hear those stories. So I really encourage young professionals just to reach out to whoever, and ask to sit down, talk with them, have a coffee with them. You can do that online now too, much easier. So that's the biggest thing, that, and it's helped me in my career, and I still do this today. Even though I'm considered more senior now, I'm still, I still have ways to go working, and I'm all looking for jobs myself. So I still reach out to people and talk to people and ask about career advice.
Amazing. That's really exceptional advice from your end as well. So thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time to sit down for this interview. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks. Happy to do so.